Hi, and welcome to the last part of the beginner PowerShell tutorial series. So far, we've seen the fundamentals, variables, different types of loops, different types of conditional statements. Now, today we're going to be looking at error handling. Now, this is going to be to prevent terminating errors and non-terminating errors, just really giving some good output to the users, be able to see what's going on in your scripts, seeing what types of errors are happening and be able to avoid those at all costs and just have better handling code. So what we're going to be doing first is just going over some code here, which is going to generate a non-terminating error, which basically means we're going to get an error output, but you're going to see the rest of the script still executes. And then we're going to go from there and see all the different options that we have. So let's go ahead and let's use our same, slightly different file path this time because we don't want it to exist. So I'm going to put seed data, and then we're just going to put the folder as wrong here because it does not exist. And then we're going to do files, and we're going to see a new commandlet here called get child item. Now what that does, in case you're wondering, is basically it will get any folders or files in this path. So if I did provide a correct path, it would give me basically the tree structure or that directory listing of this directory. So if I just give you guys a quick example here of what that would look like on an actual path, just so you guys can see it here. Let me just list out my C data, and then I'll put names here. So if you guys see this here, so we can see that it is a directory. We can see the last write time of these folders, and we can see the name of the folders. And we can do a lot of other stuff with this commandlet, but for this example, basically that's just what it does. And then we're going to do a write output here, and we are just going to see, should still see this even if error. And then we are just going to put a simple for each here. And we're just going to get the content of path. And if we don't really care too much here of if this will run, I honestly would have no idea if this would actually run properly or not. But I know that the error is going to happen here. And we're still going to see this. This is not going to execute because files is going to be null. So if we run this here, now we actually do see it runs, we get an error message, and we see that we actually still got to this line 5, which is should still see this even if an error occurred. So what happens here is by default, an error action is set to continue. Now, if we do a dash error action here, we see that there's continue, ignore, inquire, silently continue, stop, and suspend. So I'm going to go over the top 5 here. Suspend just kind of pauses the script, which probably is not really going to be very used. But continue, basically what that does is it will continue the script, but it will show an error message to the user, this ugly red message here. Ignore will simply not output the error message, not record the error message either, and keep going. Inquire will show the error message to the user and actually prompt the user to either continue or to stop. Silently continue will not show the error message to the user, but will actually still record the error message in the error variable, but still continue. And then stop will keep track of the error, display the error, and stop the code completely. Now, what we're going to want to do, and what I typically recommend, is to always set your error action to stop. So if we set that to stop here, you will see that we will not see this output anymore. So if we run this, we still get the error, but we do not see this line right after, which is great. We know where the error is. That is awesome. Now, what we're going to want to do actually is always try to avoid these types of errors and show a nicer error message to the user or to yourself. So what we do to get that is actually wrap this around a try-catch statement. Try-catch statements are in a lot of languages, including PowerShell. So what that looks like here is if we put a try and then a curly bracket, and we're just going to indent this properly, and then put a closing curly bracket here, and then catch, open and close curly brackets. And then in here, we are going to get our variable that gets piped into this dot exception dot message. And what that's going to do is going to get the message of the error that we get. So if I run this here, we see that we don't see the ugly red error message, but we do see just the message of the error, which is cannot find path, see data wrong because it does not exist. So it gives a very, very clear message of what's going on compared to this ugly error message here, which is get child item, cannot find path because it does not exist. At line 3, character 8 gives us a lot of details that we probably don't really need. I mean, the line number is quite useful, and we could output the whole message if we really wanted to. If we do it like this, we get the whole error message just in a white text. And we can always get other values from it. But for now, we're just going to keep it like this. Now, what would happen if we do not have this error action stop, even in this try catch statement? What will actually happen, and we're just going to make this more visible here. If we do a write output and we put error, error, if we run this here, we see that we actually get the ugly error, red error message still, and we still get this should see this even if error, which we shouldn't see it because we are in a try catch statement. But the try catch statement will only ever catch terminating errors, which means errors that will put an end to the script. So that's why if we had our error action set to stop here, it actually caught the error and goes into our catch statement, which now shows error, error. What I actually recommend is to set the default error action to stop. Now you can see what the error action default is by a variable in PowerShell. So if we do the $ error action preference, so if we check what this is right now, it's set to continue. What I like to do is set that to stop here. And we're going to put that at the top of our script, as that's where it should be. And then if we run this, even without our error action stop, we actually still see that we get the error, error now, which is awesome. Because you always want to really kind of have your errors as terminating errors. This way your try-catch statements are always good. They will always catch the errors, and you could display a much nicer error message to the users. And then finally, that with strict mode will let you really easily debug your code. You can show nicer error messages here if you wanted. You can have some write outputs to see where kind of the error happens. Or you could use the error variable, like I mentioned earlier, the stop will record the error message as well. So you can always look at your errors variable, which is right here. Now, if we run just this error variable, we're going to see that we get quite a lot of errors here, which is normal because it's all the errors that you have ended up running in your PowerShell session. And we know that we've ran quite a few errors this time. Now, if we do a 0, we get the latest error that's happened. And then if we do a dot notation, we can see that we can get tons of different details here. So we can do the dot exception, dot message, and then if we run this, we get the message, the most recent error message that would have happened, which is awesome because in the try catch, as soon as it hits an terminating error, which is going to be all the time, it's going to pass it to the catch statement. So if we check the latest error, we can get exactly the error that we want, output it to the user, and the user can then check and see what's going on. Now, what's going to happen later on is when we're interacting with databases or having some remote sessions, especially if we're working with multiple servers, we're going to have all these open database connections or open remoting sessions. What we would want to do is we would always want to close out of those sessions and maybe clean up some variables. Now, this is where the try catch finally block kind of comes in. So just like the try catch block, but instead we add a finally option in here with a open and close brackets. And then we can do a write output. This will always run no matter what. Even if there is no errors, this will always run. So it'll run everything that's in the try. If there's no errors, it'll go right to the finally and run that. If there is an error that happens in the try, it'll go into the catch, and then it will still run what's in the finally. So if we run this here, we see that we get our error message and we see that we get the output from the finally. Now, if for some reason we did not have, just multi-comment this out here. Let's say if we just had a simple write output here and said no errors, and we run this, we see that we get the no errors and this will always run no matter what. So what I would usually do is I would put all my closing statements for database connections or remote sessions in my finally block, and then maybe clear out some variables that I don't need anymore or that I'll be reusing maybe later on in my code that I don't want to get mixed up with the data that ran in here, because by chance, if there's an error that happens and that variable does not get emptied out and still gets checked, I want to make sure that it's nullified or removed, and this way I will not accidentally get this old data back. And that's pretty much all the error handling that we need to really look at right now in PowerShell. And that's really solidifies the beginner tutorial series. So in the next series, we'll be looking at defining some functions, testing with pester, and some Active Directory commandlets. So I will also be doing a Active Directory tutorial and setting up virtual machines with VirtualBox and Hyper-V. I'm going to do both in separate videos, just depending on what type of hardware you have. If you're able to run Hyper-V, then I would recommend Hyper-V, but if not, VirtualBox will work, and I will show you both. And I will see you on the next videos. Thanks.